You may not realize it, but if you're going through grief, you may be doing something that's actually making it harder than it needs to be. And I'm going to tell you what that is. Grief is hard enough. Anybody who's been through it, anyone who's been through heartbreak or loss, knows how tough grief is. Nobody really likes grief. The thing is, we often are doing the same mistake that's actually making it more difficult and take longer to process and longer to heal from, and we don't even know it. So let's talk about what that mistake is. My name is Jolie, and I work with people that are grieving as a life coach, relationship coach, going through all these transitions of life. Grief is a common element, and I work with people through this so they can learn how to get through it to the other side. So number one, the common mistake that I see that people have with grief that's making it harder than it needs to be is they're judging the feelings that are showing up. They're judging the feelings. What that means is basically the thing is with grief, it's anger and it's sadness and it's confusion and then denial and then there's shock. Like it's all these feelings all wrapped into one. Like imagine a knot that's with like five different strings tied into it. It's going to be like a lot to untangle. And for a lot of people, one emotion is hard to emotionally regulate and understand how to create space for it without judging it, right? If they're just feeling one thing. The thing is with grief is it's all these different feelings all at the same time. And the tendency can be for us to want to drive the path of grief. In other words, it's been X period of time. I shouldn't feel sad anymore. Or it's been, they hurt me so much. So why do I still love them? Or why am I still angry and giving them my space? We start to judge these feelings that show up as a natural part of the grieving process. And that is actually thwarting our ability to go through the feelings and heal and process it. So, the number one thing that you could do to make grief just that much easier is to not judge the feelings. And you might say, well, what does that even mean to not judge a feeling, to give space for the feeling? And it's a great question. And that's where emotional intelligence, emotional regulation comes in, where basically we create space for that feeling. So, in other words, if I'm grieving, let's say, someone that I lost, I let's say it was a relationship, and let's say I broke off the relationship, but then I notice that there's feelings of like sadness and longing and fear and love and all of these things come up. It would be easy to judge those feelings and say, well, logically, it doesn't make sense because you're the one that did this. So you don't have permission to feel like you miss them or that you love them or all those sad feelings because you are the one who actually prompted this separation. You can see how that starts to create the knot. You're actually pulling that knot even tighter when you do that. Instead, what you could do is some basic emotional intelligence, emotional regulation techniques where I would basically ask, if I'm working with somebody, I would ask, okay, so I'm hearing some anger that's showing up, right? Or some sadness, whatever that feeling is. I would say like, okay, what is that feeling that's showing up? Sometimes it's hard just to name the feeling. They're just like, I feel bad or I feel not good. So it's like, okay, what is that feeling? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it uncertainty? Try to have a name for that feeling. And there's feelings charts and things like that that can help you here. So number one would be to name the feeling. If you don't want to judge it, number one, name it. Okay, this is anger. Uh, there's nothing wrong with anger. Anger is a totally healthy emotion, and it's fine to have, right? So, first off, we want to name it. And then what I ask my clients to do is I say, okay, that anger, let's try to tune into your body. Tell me where in your body do you feel that anger? And normally it takes them a minute and they're like, what do you mean? I just feel it. And I'm like, yeah, so like tune in. Where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your hands? Like, do your hands feel like clenched and angry? I'm like, no, not my hands. So you might tune in and maybe they're like, oh, I feel it in my chest right here, right? Sometimes it's your chest, it might be your throat, your head, your stomach. It could be anything, right? But try to tune in and say, where do you most feel that feeling, whatever that feeling is? And then what I would ask my client to do is we're going to sit here and we're going to take a couple of deep breaths. In through our nose, out through our mouth. We're going to go slow. And I want you to specifically focus on breathing into that area that you just pointed out. So almost like you're giving it some space, you're giving it like a fresh dose of fresh air, right? So we would breathe, and I'll actually do that with you, right? So we want to breathe in. You want to exaggerate it, and we want to go slow. So feel it in through your body. A lot of times when we're doing this, you don't even notice how rigid and stiff you are. So I want you to feel it breathing in. Notice my shoulders. You want to let it in and out. Let's do one more. Okay. All right. And then what we do is we check in again and we say, all right, that feeling in your chest is it's probably still there. We don't expect it to go away, but how is it feeling now? And normally they're like, all right, it feels a little like there's a little more relief. It's a little better now, right? It's just a little less tight. That can be the first step to giving space for that feeling, is just naming it and saying, hey, we're not trying to push it away. We're actually going to take a couple deep breaths so we can sit here with it. And that can be a first step to just learning how to sit with our feelings, that feelings don't have to equate to actions. They don't have to equate to a judgment. They don't even have to equate to reality in terms of what's going on outside, right? Relating to something that happened or didn't happen. But they are real in terms of what our body is sensing. So we want to just create space and say, hey, whatever you're feeling, that's okay. And I know some people have a hard time with this. And they're like, no, all feelings are not okay. If I want to go, punch somebody down the street, that's not okay. I would actually argue and say it's totally fine if you feel that sort of anger and tension that you want to punch somebody. And it's actually probably not healthy if you try to tell yourself you don't feel that way. The difference here, this is the key point here. There's a big difference between feeling and action. In other words, just because I feel like punching somebody, right? Or going to your ex's house and toilet papering or egging, whatever people do, right? There's a difference of feeling that and doing it. And by sitting with this feeling and just giving a couple deep breaths, what we're doing is basically creating that gap, creating that space where we can say, oh, it's okay that I feel this right now, and I can just sit and feel it and breathe. It doesn't have to equate to if I let myself feel this, I'm going to immediately react. That's where we start to create a little bit of space where the more space we can create, we can actually really handle and regulate through really difficult things and not have to have any sort of instant reaction to it. So again, number one thing that's going to help you in your grieving process is to not judge the feelings that show up. Don't try to rationalize them and try to figure them all out. Why it doesn't make sense that I feel this way, and this doesn't make sense, and I know I shouldn't feel this way, and I should. No, 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 no. The number one thing you want to do is avoid that. Just breathe and give space for whatever feelings show up. Grief is gonna be the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's grief. That's the ride you're signing up for. And the biggest opportunity is to let them pass through you, right? The more that you fight it, the more that they're gonna fight back. There's this saying that what you resist persists. This is exactly what happens with feelings. The more that we try to shove the feelings down and bottle it and say, I shouldn't feel that way, the more they're there. And normally the tighter it gets, right? It's like that knot. So instead of fighting it, we want to just let it be and let it pass through us. Maybe we sit here, we do a couple deep breaths, and we let the feelings be, right? Maybe it's a lot of anger. We let ourselves feel that anger. Maybe it's sadness. We let ourselves cry. Great, right? But we want to create that space and basically say to ourselves, even like, this is okay here, right? This anger, this is okay. This sadness, this is okay. This fear, this is okay. And what you're doing is you're telling yourself that it's okay to be having a hard time putting all these pieces together right now, but that you trust that if you give yourself enough space and enough time, enough support and love, you will be able to put the pieces together. I have full confidence in you, right? Grief is hard, but whether it's trauma, loss, heartbreak, whatever it is, you can heal from it and you can get to the other side, and you will get to the other side if you let it pass through you. People say often, now I'm just getting on a tangent, right? But people say, like, oh, time heals all wounds. Well, yes and no. Time, the way that the time is spent is really what determines whether or not you're going to heal or not. So if you're spending years and years and years dealing with some sort of grief or pain or heartbreak, and you're pushing it the whole time, right? You're pushing it down. You're trying to just, no, I'm fine. At the end of however much time that is, you're probably not going to be very much in a different place than you were when you started. So in that regard, time doesn't really matter. It's what you do with that time. So even if you just have a short period of time since something has happened, but you're able to give yourself that space to feel and let it pass through you, you'll actually be surprised that you can actually go through things and process and heal from things a lot faster. Life just becomes a lot easier. Things don't stick to you and kind of weigh you down as much. And that's the journey that I want to help you on, is so that you can start to feel that lightness, right? So that you don't have all this stuff accruing and kind of like weighing you down on your back, right? We can let it go. We can let it pass through us. The thing is, a lot of us have a lot of built up baggage back here that first we have to flush out before we can really feel that freedom. So number one step is just feel the feeling, right? Name it, give it a name, see where you feel it in your body, and breathe through it, right? Try to bring yourself into this moment right here, right now. Feel your feet firmly on the ground. That's a good grounding exercise. So like really feel your big toe, your little toe, your heel, push them on the ground, feel it, so that you're right here, right now, and right here in this moment, you're feeling this feeling, and you are okay, right? That's the most important thing. I'm going to be sending more content like this about grief. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to drop it somewhere in the comments, and I will do my best to create some sort of resource that's going to help. Best wishes to all of you. If you're not already subscribed to my newsletter, that's going to be a great way that you can stay up to date and see different stories and content, things like this, in real life on a regular basis. So see y'all next time.